welcome to Heart Snuggles. We hope you're enjoying your day today. I brought an old friend from Australia on here, so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, listeners. Listeners, I think you guys are listening. My name is Ryan. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher based in Torquay, which is on the surf coast of Victoria. I first met Lexi in yoga. I think it was where was it, Lex? At Yoke, maybe?
Yeah, Yoke.
It was Yoke in South Melbourne where I was teaching yoga, and since then, we sort of just kept in touch a little here and there, and I've sort of followed Lex's journey all around the world. Seems like she's got the travel bug, which is a good bug to have. I'm stoked and honoured to be on talking today. So thanks for having me, Lex.
Yay! Tell us about how you ended up in Torquay.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I think the nature of things. I've always loved the beach and loved surfing and loved a bit more, vast open space. The city's cool. Like if you're not from Melbourne, I live in Melbourne, Australia. I was living in Melbourne, Australia for a long time. If you've ever visited a big city, sometimes the culture is dynamic. There's lots of cool things going on, and sometimes it's nice to find, especially when you're working with meditation and yoga. It sometimes gets a little too busy, So I found that I was more and more seeking a bit more space, and Torquay had a big draw card of the ocean and good surf. So sort of found my way down here. I also follow people that inspire me, and the guy who opened Yoke, I've kind of been doing that for my whole life. If someone's sort of inspiring me, I'll go and hang out with them for a little bit, and I think there's real merit in that, just sort of hanging out and sort of learning from different people. And Chris, who Lexi, where we met, where he opened Yoke in South Melbourne, and then he had a studio in Torquay. So I was coming down teaching for Chris down in Torquay and just hanging out with Chris, and got to know the community in Torquay and got to know Torquay. So it's a beautiful space. If you're ever in Australia or if you ever visit Victoria, come down, and you probably might have heard of the Great Ocean Road, or the 12 Apostles, which is like one of the, I think it's one of the wonders of the world. I'm not too sure.
I think so.
Yeah, well, that's really close by. So I'm sort of near there if you're thinking, where is Torquay?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I did not spend enough time down there, but whenever the borders open up, I'll definitely be back. And what got you into yoga? What was that journey like?
Yeah, it's a interesting story. I was a professional runner for many years, so I'd run. That was my career. I really wanted to represent my country at a high level, and managed to do that. And I started taking on. I got injured as a runner and took up duathlon, which is running and riding, and triathlon, swimming, running, and riding. And I was racing as a career, so that I was making money through racing, and broke my hip. I was 2 weeks out from a world championships and broke my hip, and that was kind of like a little sort of it was one of the times, if I reflect on my life, if I've ever felt heavy energy, or some kind of like deep seated lull in life, it was definitely then. I went into I wouldn't say, I definitely felt like a little depressed about life. And one of my friends, who are so fortunate to have good friends on my side, she had opened a yoga studio in Richmond, and I was trying to rehab the injury to come back and compete at a high level. So my goal was focused purely on rehab and running again and going fast again. And she said, "Why don't you come in and do some yoga?" And I was like, oh, I was a little intimidated at the start, all these women in hot pants touching their toes. I couldn't even touch my knees, like let alone my toes. My hamstrings were jammed up. So yeah, I started going to yoga and just kind of fell in love with yoga. I'd leave yoga and I felt a sense of ease in my body, rather than, I felt energized and really relaxed. I'd feel energized from training, but I'd feel pretty tired and I'd have to rest a lot. So yoga gave me something that was new and fresh, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. So I kept doing yoga, and 10 years later, I'm teaching yoga as my full-time profession, and I have a little yoga studio in Torquay, and it's been great. Yoga has taken me all around the world, and I've been fortunate to meet some fantastic people. I met you through yoga, so we're reconnecting, and I think that's a good thing about yoga. It's such a world now. It's on the global level. I mean, it has been for many, many, many years, but it's the same thing. We're all doing the same thing, and it's cool to connect with different people around the world on that level.
Yeah, I always, no matter where I go, like that was definitely the hub of where I found so many people in Australia, was attending different yoga studios, and you just find really open-minded people, and it's a good place to start.
Yeah, if that's a zone you want to hang out in, like you definitely can find crew like that in yoga, which is cool, you know.
What are some of your other favorite parts about yoga and the practice itself?
Yeah, well, as I've sort of transitioned and learned about yoga, I definitely have learned about more on. I was always loving I was definitely always loving the mindfulness element of yoga. I mean, yoga for me was never really go in and do a workout. I sort of had my athletic endeavors as a workout, and yoga was more something that would substitute that or complement that. So I'd never really go into yoga to do a workout, but I definitely thrive on more of a stronger practice. I love the moving my body and working into some of the classical postures of yoga. Some of the old school postures and some of the new stuff that's coming through. So movement is a big one, but mindfulness has always been the sort of forefront of the practice. And I guess when you have you can see the more that you're in something, the more that you become familiar with the whole picture of yoga. So it's such a broad brushstroke, yoga, and has so many different modalities, but mindfulness and meditation has been a really nice one to explore. We were talking about this off record, but I've sort of had a few retreats lately that I've sort of tried to post it as an opportunity to be mindful in a modern world. Finding mindfulness in a modern day world, which can sometimes be challenging. It sounds like the most simplest thing in the universe, just to be present, but to consistently tap into it takes some effort. It takes a little bit of work. So I've enjoyed that element of the practice, stabilizing my mind and moving closer to my own energy and to that degree moving closer to others and noticing how I'm in relationship with the world would be mindfulness, really. So I dig that. I like that.
Me too. Technically, yoga is the practice of the mind, I find, when you go into the philosophies and everything. So, how are ways that you incorporate mindfulness in this modern world?
Yeah, right. That's a good question. I think when you can do it. I mean, you can do it formally. So it's the formal sitting practice of meditation. So finding a ritual. We all have probably rituals, like you might get out of bed in the morning and wash your face, or go to the bathroom, or then you might have a cup of tea or coffee or water or whatever it is that you do. I guess that's a morning ritual. So doing it as a formal ritual, like whether it's every morning, or I notice that mindfulness or meditation in a formal practice is useful to just create structure in the day. It brings a little structure in, and it's also a nice training ground to bring your body and your mind into the same place. But then you got and you could do that for 5 minutes. You could just focus on your breath. You could do more of a technique. You could use technique in your meditation, and there's so many different layers of meditation. Or you could do it on the spot, which is just, I think there's so much potential for that, just to sort of pause and just contact the present moment. So it's like pause, interrupt thinking for a moment, and just let your mind expand, which is a kind of cool way to. Some teachers would talk to go up, go to a window and just look out. You kind of just look out and you're right there for a moment. And the more that you do that, the more that you can kind of contact what's present. I think the more you can start to notice when your mind goes off. And before you were talking about some of the literature of text, yoga and being a lot of it. Yeah, there's definitely a lot. We'll sort of we'll talk about present moment, nowness, contacting the direct experience. And it's said, and this doesn't have to be your experience, but you can kind of check it out. It said that when your mind goes off the present moment into whatever it is, some kind of self-preoccupation or what's going to happen, what should be happening, some kind of judgment about what's currently happening. When the mind goes off like that, that's sometimes what causes the most tension or tightening in the body, or the most suffering. In Buddhism, I like this, the study of Buddhism, they would talk to it as suffering, which is a pretty hard word, but I think loosely translated, it's more like disruption. You have lots of disruption when your mind is somewhere different, but when it's here and present and attentive and open, perhaps there's less of that. And the good thing is you can kind of just check that out. Like when you're getting squeezed by life, is your mind thinking forward, or you're actually can you kind of just come back to what's happening now? And my dog's like destroying my it doesn't matter. I'm a new puppy, and my puppy just loves to chew things. You know how it is. So that's mindfulness right there on the spot. You can react or you can allow.
You're being tested right now.
Reacting or allowing. Sometimes, it's nice to react and notice like a place of reactivity and how that can be really useful sometimes. Like if something's sort of tugging at your attention, if you just avoid it or try and like suppress it, sometimes that's not useful. But sometimes it's useful to sort of speak out or take action in a mindful way, leading with this with a mindful intention in a mindful way. Sometimes we act out mindlessly, we say something that we don't mean, or we react and we respond. And let's say we were having a conversation and you were coming up against something and you really wanted to prove your point, and I was like trying to prove my point, and I knew that you were coming up against things, in a mindful way. I might just listen to you rather than sort of react to you. So rather than my first thought, I might just rest back and notice there's something bigger than, ego clinging or trying to win or trying to get one up or try and, sometimes you just got to allow, which is hard when your puppy's chewing like one of your favorite things, but it's okay.
You want to go sort it?
Nah, she's okay. It's broken now, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that, what you said. And it's really beautiful when you can take yourself out of it and stop taking things personal in a moment of disruption, or when you're with someone else, and just allow them the space to really hear what they're actually trying to say and what's actually bothering them, instead of reacting with the same energy. So how else do you stay mindful when you're around people maybe that are like really intense energies and maybe bringing you down?
Yeah, I think it's always nice to just work with your own energy, like to the degree that you can, like if you notice that you've been hooked by something, or if you're reacting to something, or if you're sort of, judging someone or blaming someone, or there's some kind of um, like if you're around crew that are doing the same, I think it's useful to work with your own energy rather than trying to, so like if you notice yourself getting like frustrated, or if you notice yourself getting down, then use that as an opportunity to move closer to your own energy. Check out downness, or check out frustration, or check out, and to the degree that you notice when you've been hooked, to that degree you can notice when others have been hooked, or when others are feeling frustrated, or then when others are judging people. If you can feel what judgment feels like and move closer to your own self, then to that degree you can move closer to someone else. So in Buddhism, it's very much speaks about, in the Mahayana Buddhist practice, they'll talk about expanding the quality of expanding the energy. So you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it more so for others. So getting to know what judgment feels like, or blaming feels like, or anger feels like, so that you can be of benefit to others that are judging or blaming or being hooked. So I don't know, it's cool to just, if you feel that way, if you feel like you're being pulled down by something, you can do two ways, right? You can sort of move and shift lanes and, go somewhere different, or you can just work with your own energy. Sometimes those crew are the best opportunities, the unstable or the chaotic or challenging moments are said to be, as that's cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. It's said to be the best teachers. Those challenging moments are the best. The people that frustrate you the most could be your best teacher. It's kind of like a bit of a paradox. You want to sort of stay away from those crew, but at the same time, if you work with your own energy, then you can be free perhaps of that which binds you. There's this saying in Buddhism called shunyata, which means that things are actually empty of opinion or bias or prejudice. For instance, the one way to describe it is like if there's rain on the roof, if you're a gardener and you wake up and you hear rain on the roof, it's like, wow, that's a great day, right? Like your veggies are getting watered and nourishment. If you've planned a wedding and you wake up and there's rain on the roof, it's like, what a terrible day, but rain is free of opinion. Rain is just rain. It's empty of anything. It's just, rain is just experience. Yet when we come up against people that we perhaps, don't like, or or push us down or judge us or blame us, their action is free of any, it's just their action. It doesn't have to go along with my opinion about the action, or it could just be an experience. And that's in nature, that's very, you could say, freeing. There's real freedom in that. In the depth of emptiness is freedom.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, people will be like, well, empty, that's kind of like a little bit dull, isn't it? Like, it's not so much dull, like not everything, there's form, but if you're seeing it through the opinion filter of your own opinion, then it's actually fracturing what's happening. So even though in the past this person's been bringing you down, this moment is a fresh, brand new moment. And yeah, so it's hard. It's a challenging one. It's it's not challenging. You just work with mindfulness in the modern day world, and you notice when you've been hooked, or you notice when you have gone off, or you notice when you're judging or blaming. And I think that's cool. When you notice, that's the first point of it, right? The noticing.
Yeah.
They actually say in Buddhism there's three, it's called the three difficult practices. So the first one is notice when you've gone off. The second is do something different, like change lanes. And the third is stay in the lane, like change lanes, do something different. It might be come back to what's happening now, look out at the window, expand your mind, notice your breath, notice how you're judging, practice compassion instead of, and then keep doing that for the rest of your life, rather than just a one-off, oh, I've done it, I win,
Yeah, I think that's super important. And it's okay too, like if you're just starting this journey of noticing like how you're being hooked in and noticing how you're playing in the dynamics of your relationships, like having grace along the way. Like even when we are mindful and aware, we still slip into those patterns, and just having grace as you're on this human journey that we all are on.
For sure. Yeah, there's beautiful teacher, Pema Chodron. She's a really great teacher. She'll talk very much about compassion, the compassionate practice, and bathing whatever it is that you're bathing things in compassion. Like if you notice that your mind's gone off, or if you notice that you're judging someone, rather than there could be like a harshness to it. Oh, I'm judging someone again. Or there could just be, you could bathe judgment in compassion. There's judgment, that old friend, just being able to check that out and just open wholeheartedly to meet judgment. What's that feel like? What's that taste like? Rather than tighten even more and be harsh or judge yourself, or just notice that can happen a lot, like you said, for sure.
That's so beautiful. Bathe in compassion. I like that term and that concept. And we can always use more compassion. And I find too, like when you meet someone that is frustrated, or even when myself, it's like when someone brings compassion, like it immediately softens me, and it reminds me of the present moment. It reminds me that I'm not just this angry sensation or the person that is experiencing that.
Yeah, and you said something interesting before. You said one of the things you said was get out of your own way. And it's interesting, like the ego clinging. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like we're all kind of the center of our own universe. Like, the listeners out there will have their lives, and they'll go about the rest of their day after listening to this, and they won't really remember, everyone else in the world. But, in the same degree, we have a shared experience. Like, even though we're in the depths of anger or frustration in this moment, like there's so many other people that are feeling the same thing around the world, even though sometimes it feels like you're the only one that is feeling it. But if you can notice that, then you're trying to work with your own anger or frustration or judgment so that you can wish or have the wish perhaps that you perhaps have the wish that others are feeling less of it if you're already feeling it, and work with that so that perhaps you can be of use to the world that is angry or judging, or it's an interesting one. I like the concept of expanding it out. Like we're doing this stuff, this spiritual practice, kind of all this stuff as a means not for a self-help project, but to be a better person in the world and be of benefit to the whole world.
Yeah, you're doing it. That's what helps me too, is like I'm doing this for the collective. Like although it's internal, it's actually healing the collective and the communities, because once you do it in you, you can help support other people and be like a model of that as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so I know you love communities as well. So let's talk about what communities mean to you.
Yeah, community is an interesting one. Like if you explore it, I mean, I think we've all kind of had an exploration of community at some point, just through lack of community. I've noticed there's a lack of community at the moment, being in lockdown. So community is, I think that, in terms of when you don't have community because we've been locked up and people have had experience of lockdown and lacking community. I think when you have that, you realize how important community is and how nourishing community is, to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Um, so that's why I really love community, because it gives people an opportunity to come into a place that's bigger than themselves, like whether it's part of a bricks and mortar community, whether it's part of a local suburb community, feeling connected to something that's greater than just them. And then it becomes more about the community, like you're making decisions based less on just you and more on what's good for community and what's I think in that degree community is really useful. And building community, it's the first time I've really owned a yoga studio. It's been really nourishing to build a community and see that people come in and really enjoy meeting other people. And you're talking before about meeting people in a yoga space. People in communities are more willing to perhaps open up and talk to people, and through that, when you become familiar with that, the opposite would be if you don't have any community and you're very insulated, and which is okay, if you're more insulated, but sometimes to have a shared experience and to sort of notice that there's a bigger sense of self can be expanding and spacious, rather than this sense of contracted self, which can sometimes be overwhelming and crowding.
And how have you worked on building your community? What have you done to like attract the community you desire?
Yeah, I just kind of just put it out there and just it's like there's a movie, what is it, like you built the field of dreams, build it and they will come. But it's like I'm really not that great with advertising and selling things. I don't really want to like push that line. To a degree it's a business, so you have to try and market the business and make people come in, make it look lucrative to come in. People want to come in, but I don't know, I think people are just going to find their way in, and word of mouth is a good one. Like if people have a good experience in the community, then they're going to invite other people and it's going to be a snowball and it will ripple. And I think that's been really useful, just the word of mouth and having something that's quite nourishing. Practice of yoga is pretty nourishing, and having great teachers that are in the community to teach, it's been also really useful. So people have a good experience, and then perhaps they want to share the good experience with their friends. So that's how I felt the business has grown the most, through word of mouth, which is kind of cool.
And how do you want people to feel when they're in your space?
Yeah, just like there's some kind of ease, like it's not that they can relax. It's not intimidating. It's not, there's no judgment. We have values in the business. So for the 4 values are equality. So it's like we would hope that, and this is a challenging one. Like if you look at equality in yoga, especially like in the last couple of years, a lot of stuff has come up about, who's practicing yoga these days, who can afford to go to a yoga studio, because it's pretty expensive when you think about it. Like you could say it's for the middle class and up. It's not, some of the studios I teach at in Melbourne, it's like $30 for a drop-in class. I don't know many people that can afford $30 for one class, especially uni students and whatnot. So, but then on the other side, as a business owner, I've noticed how expensive it is to run a studio, like with rents, with paying teachers. And I can understand, the cost of running a business like that. But then, it's so one of the values is equality, hoping that anybody or anyone can come in and practice yoga. And if they need yoga and they can't afford it, we have lots of people that are on free passes and things like that. So we try our best. We have that in our value set, to try our best to always come back to making the practice accessible for people. So even, you know, able bodies, you know, like it's very much the practice is geared these days towards, if I look at some of the yoga studios that I teach in, able bodies, you know. But if I remember, I had the fortune of teaching the Australian swim team, which included the Paralympic swim team. So teaching like disabled bodies. And it was just a real big eye opener for me to see how much my practice or my teachings are geared in terms of the physical movement is geared towards able bodies. So I think if you have it as a value or in the back of your mind, you can always sort of lean back into it and come back to the values. You know, is this going to be accessible to everyone? Is it going to be um, available to everyone? And if it's not, how can I make it better, or how can I make it accessible, but still be able to run a business that's not losing money and make it sustainable? So that's one. And the other one is compassion. So how can we be compassionate and look to compassion in all of the things that guide the business? The other one is kind. So how can we be kind? And which sort of runs along with compassion. They're a little different in a way, but and the third and then the final one is yoga. You know, how can we carry the baton for modern day yoga? And yoga's definitely changed a lot to adapt to people. But you know, people don't necessarily need to adapt to the yoga for sure, but the yoga is definitely adapted to the people. You know, we're living in a different world that we were living in years and years ago when yoga began. So yeah, we try and stick to the values as best as we can, and I think that helps guide the business a little bit. And I learned that from Chris. You know, Chris was really great with that. We'd have business meetings and we'd always come back to the values when we're making decisions. You know, what's the most compassionate value, or what's the most compassionate decision, or what's one that would it creates equality. And I think if you can do that, you can marry business and yoga together. That's been my biggest challenge. How can you run a yoga studio and still practice yoga, the practice of yoga, you know?
Yeah, it's really impactful that you're being really intentional about it and navigating it as it comes, because yeah, there's all these unforeseen challenges that come up as an owner, and to stay in your integrity is more challenging than to just forget about it, you know?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm proud of you. That's so cool. I can't wait to check out your studio.
You're gonna
What's it called?
come okay? Get down here, have a
What's
surf. You've been surfing?
Yeah, I've been surfing in California.
That's good news.
I'm learning. It's so fun. And that's
Yeah.
a big practice too, of like, the ocean is so powerful, and there's so many times where you can't fight it.
Yeah, and learning about Mother Nature and the ocean and being able to, you know, when you think about it, the ocean teaches you a lot. And you know, a lot of teachers talk about flow these days and the flow state. And when you kind of think of it, and we're talking about the mind before, um, when you everything is moving and dynamic and changing, like the nature of reality is it's changing, you know. But and we try and make things solid. We try to make things stable with our minds. Like I want to, you know, hold on to my youth, or I want to make sure that I've got this stable job, or I want to make sure that the doors stay open. And as we've known in the last couple of years, you know, things are so unstable and uncertain, and they can just change spontaneously. And the ocean's good like that. You know, when you sit in the middle of the ocean, there's movement and there's flow. And if you can learn to relax in the ocean, you know, when you're surfing, and learn to relax with movement, then that becomes the practice. You know, nothing's really that solid. So just to be able to sit in the middle of movement and kind of relax, it's a real good metaphor for life. You know, like if you can sit in the middle of change and movement and be able to relax and be okay with change, you know, when things shut down, when businesses close their doors, when you get a little older, or when you know, like all these things that change constantly, if you can relax with change and just let it be like that, then I think that's the practice of yoga. You know, that's definitely that would be one of the main sort of payoffs of yoga, when you can notice that you can relax a little bit more with things, rather than you tighten and you grip, and it's like your own personal word war when things change when you don't want them to change.
I was like, yeah, one of the most profound things in one of my first yoga classes, like holding a heart pose and then just saying, just breathe and soften. And I'm like, what? I didn't realize I could do that in this moment. And bringing that practice off the mat is so impactful.
Because it's definitely easy to tighten these days. Have you felt that? Like it's easy to harden and tighten, and why do they make that decision? Who's doing that? Or I don't like this, or I like that, you know. And then you can kind of tighten and harden, and So true, you know, like that's the practice of meditation, learning to relax, you know, learning to down regulate and relax and let tension come out of the physical body. You know, it's a challenging practice.
So it's great to practice it and learn that you have control, because I used to think that my body controlled me, and have awareness that I could change that state of my natural being.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when you go from that small thinking mind to big mind. Like you're able to discern, you can change lanes if you need. You notice you know, where your thoughts are leading you, and you can kind of get off the train of thinking if it's not useful. Or you notice when the same pattern comes up, like a lot of people have patterns, and unconsciously, you know, a pattern comes up, and if you can notice that, and if you can, you know, in order to change something, you got to do something different and change the pattern that's a bit more useful. Like I think that's cool. Yeah, for sure.
And what's something you learned about yourself during this lockdown?
I think I've paid more attention to what's really important, you know, like I've become a little bit more, I've definitely learned like to relax with change, because things are being so like volatile and dynamic. So I've been able to sort of, that's definitely the nature of impermanence, like things change, and that's sort of been validated a lot in some of the texts I've read. You know, reading it is one thing, but actually tasting it is another. So I've sort of noticed that. And then I've noticed, yeah, what are the important things in life, like friends and family, less about like success and fame, and you know, like that's kind of ego clinging. And it's cool to, you know, have success and feel like you're wanted and needed and important in life, but at the same time, you just have to look in front of you and see that, you know, you've got people that really want to support you and want to, you know, your current friends and family. And I think it's cool to pay attention to those people as well, you know, like to really nourish and nurture those relationships.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's been a big awakening for a lot of people, and like reframing, like, yeah, why am I living? What's the purpose of this life I'm doing? And
Mm.
reconnecting to those. I think humans are always the best part of life for me, for sure, as well.
Yeah. The why, that's an interesting, you say why, because I mean, if you go pre-COVID, I got sort of swept up in accumulating and working hard and like not really, you know, I would always be bouncing around studios trying to teach yoga and always working, never really like, you know,
Being.
yeah. I mean, it's to a degree, I'm fortunate that I love my work. So it's like a sense of, it's kind of like, I love it, you know, to meet all these cool people. And but yeah, there are crew, perhaps in some of the listeners might resonate with this. You know, there have been times in my life where I've been just like working, trying to accumulate stuff, pay a mortgage, buy whatever, you know, get more clothes. I think COVID's been really nourishing that actually I can walk around the same tracksuit pants 3 days in a row and wear the same t-shirt, eat pretty basic foods, not need to go out to restaurants all the time, not need to entertain myself with, you know, establishments and places, and just enjoy the simple way of living. And I think that's been you know, definitely reverts, you inspired me when you said, you know, why are we living? I think it's is it accumulating things, or is it, you know, living to, like you said, being, you know, is it you actually living life in its full entirety, which has been used. Like I get inspired by crew like you that I see traveling around on Instagram, and I'm like, you know what, like you're just living your life, you know, you're living your greatest life. And it can be challenging sometimes when you feel like you're stuck, like you have a mortgage or you have family, or you feel like you've got a lot of um, you know, listeners might feel like they have a lot of responsibilities and so forth, and they don't want to disappoint people in their jobs or disappoint relationships and things like that. But I don't know, it's like life's so short, and when I see crew like you traveling around, I think, you know, there's potential to sort of make life really great, you know. And COVID's maybe taught us that, like if you're in a job that's shitty and like not serving you, then there's opportunity to change lanes. Like life's really dynamic like that.
Yeah, I think it's so important to remember, like, what makes you happy, what brings you joy. We so often get so lost in our normal routines and day to day that we forget to even enjoy this life we're living. And It's definitely a top priority of mine as well, to connect to joy and to do what feels good and to not always be in a struggle or stress or these other emotions that we tend to kind of live in. And it's like, why aren't we living in joy and ease and these nourishing things? So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because you can choose. I mean, you can choose to have a life of like freedom, and you can choose to have a life of luxury and, modern day things, and you're gonna have to work hard for that. But I know some great crew that sort of just like they're okay just like getting around and not having a steady job and not having steady. They know I think that's the thing, like nothing's really that steady, but we try and make things. I've got a secure job, a secure house, secure relationship, secure this, secure that, and then tomorrow everything could change. But then there's crew out there that are just like, oh, I'm just gonna like just ride the wave of life, which is really inspiring. Yeah.
amazing. And last question is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Last bit of kindness someone did for me. Last. I'm wearing a jumper that a friend sent me yesterday. I received in the mail. There's a couple of jumpers from a friend that teach yoga to his girlfriend and himself in Melbourne. He's just a cool dude, and I don't know Jesse too well, but he just said it looks cold in Torquay, and he's made some jumpers. Like he's got a brand called XL or extra large, and he just sent me a couple of jumpers, and I was like, when people think about you and want to send you something, for me, it's easy to be like, oh, I don't deserve it, or I need to thank them back or send something back. But I'm getting better at just like receiving kindness and being opening my heart to receive rather than I notice when I block it, block the ability to receive. So um, that's been really lovely. So yeah, someone sent me a jumper and I was like stoked. I was like, thanks so much. I feel warmth in my heart, not just my body.
Personal.
Yeah. What about you, Lex? Can I ask that question to you?
You can ask me anything. Last random act of kindness. Today I went to my counselor, and after our session, it's at our house, and she took me to her garden and she gave me a bunch of her fresh veggies and herbs, and they were so tasty and so good, and she definitely didn't have to do that, so that was really lovely.
That's so nice, and I can see a big smile on your face. And there's that analogy of the ripple effect. Like it's like if the butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon can affect the weather in Europe, then like our energy can affect definitely the people that we're in direct experience to. Like if someone does a act of kindness to you, like gives you the veggies or herbs in the garden, and then you're walking down the street with a big smile on your face, and you look up and you smile at someone, that person's probably going to smile, and then they're walking down the street and smiling, and someone look up, and you don't know how far your smile has traveled. But that's the cool thing about kindness. It can definitely ripple.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. That's why it's my question of the podcast, so that people continue it.
Oh yeah, there you go. I love it.
Well, thank you so much. How can people find you or work with you if they want more?
Yeah, thanks, Lex. I'm on Instagram as Ryan Mannix Yoga. I have a studio called It's All Yoga in Torquay, and yeah, you can connect, or YouTube if you want to practice a class. Ryan Mannix, just type it in, you'll see some classes. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.